Okay. We're going live. Let us know out there if the sound is coming through nice and clear. We're coming up to the wire with getting the audio balanced so that no one would be echoing. How's it going, sir?
It's going pretty good. We finally, hopefully, if the chat confirms for us that we got our audio balanced and not all over the place, that'd be great.
Yeah. We had an update from the streaming service I use, which it's always wonderful on your presets. It's like, yeah, these presets that were perfect for you for the previous show and the previous shows and the previous shows. Yeah, to heck with that. We got a brand new. We're just gonna change them all, and it's gonna look exactly the same, but not actually function with the output you wanted. Just as all software
It's like, I hope
works.
you really enjoy this update that doesn't help you in any way.
Exactly. Pretty much. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. I'm glad to be back here again. It's always fun when I get to hang out with you and we get to talk over a script. This one, I've had a bad run, so with the scripts that I get, but maybe this will be the one that breaks that run. We'll see when we talk about it tonight.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's the 90-10 rule. I mean, the majority of the screenplays we get, they're most likely going to be poor but have a lot of potential, ideally, and some are going to be the few and far between are going to be really good. But yeah, we're doing this. I'm going to be. I don't know what's going to happen with next week. I know we're going to do next week's show. It's just I've got such a busy week lined up. I don't even know if I'm going to be online at all next week for some of the stuff I have to do. Not just for the wonderful Patreon and all the people that subscribe to this channel and follow me and stuff, but just getting the development things up and running. So a couple of projects I'm working on can get into production for the fall. That's the hard part, but that's why I do this show, to give you the insights into that area, and then give you the insights into the prior two, where basically the scouting, the canvassing, the finding the scripts that need to go into production. So we've got one like that today. So yeah, I think the chats are responding positive, 5x5 on the audio. So let's get this one started. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Little Chad, back again. This has got to be your fourth, I think? Yeah, your fourth
I think,
appearance.
yep, because we did the Madden Extra one, and then we did two other two actual scripts where I was on the show reviewing it on the weekly. So yeah, this will be in fourth, and it's always fun, always a good time.
Yeah, and you can check out his channel, youtube.com/ascendantart, with links there in the live chat here for those listening live, and it'll be in the description for those on the replay. So we've got an interesting script today. It's another type of cops and robbers type of broad umbrella genre. It's called Upset, and it's from last year's Blacklist, and it plays 27th with 13 votes. So if you've been following the show up until now, you've noticed that the last almost dozen episodes or so, the vote spread has been kind of pretty narrow within between the 10s and 15s, and the placement has been all over the place from like 18 to like 40. So there's a lot of these. So we're getting a feel for what the average of the script is. Now, this one here, Upset, is written by Ben Bolea, and I'm not too familiar with him. I wasn't able to find a whole lot about him, other than that he's like just a general film producer, done a bunch of his own self-produced stuff. Indie side of things, very, very small and things in this nature. So first, congrats for him making the Blacklist. But yeah, we've got an interesting one here. And so for Upset, what is Upset? Well, I'll give you the log line, and then we'll have Chad give us a little bit of the synopsis here. So, log line for Upset: two border cops in Michigan's Upper Peninsula find themselves in the crosshairs of Canadian biker gangs, international drug cartels, and shady government agents after intercepting a drug deal gone bad, All the day after an awkward one night stand.
Yeah, here's our synopsis. In the icy terrains of the Upper Peninsula, Glenn and Janice, officers of U.P.S.E.T, grapple with cartel-related drama and true crime intrigue in their small town, uncovering secrets while dealing with personal tensions. Just as they close in on their target regarding a botched drug exchange, a new threat emerges, leaving them questioning who they can trust within their own ranks.
So this actually gave me a little bit more insight because I knew that there was a general party that dealt with border crossings, like crimes, at least in this region. I just didn't know it was called UPSET, but it stands for Upper Peninsula Substance Enforcement Team. And as far as I can tell, it's kind of a real thing, but not really. It's all over the place. I was trying to do some research into this, but it was not easy. I was getting a lot of misinformation from Google. Did you know of this
I
type
had
of
never.
department? No.
I've never lived in Michigan. I have family, in-law family types who came from Michigan. Not once have they ever mentioned, described, or ever brought up something called upset. So, uh, it's totally possible that this is exactly what they're describing, and I just have no idea. Or I mean, I think so, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It seemed plausible, like the way they described it seemed entirely plausible that if you're that close to a border area, you're gonna have some kind of specialized interagency, team that would work on those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, at least I'd figured that you have someone that's like a liaison between the government or the authorities of the other opposite end of the border, especially if you're allies or partners in the sense that how Canada and the United States has been. It's like, okay, we're going to coordinate here to make sure that X amount of whatever crime is going on here, we tackle it in whatever citizenship the criminals are or whatever jurisdiction it happens. We work tandem to make sure that that gets resolved accordingly. Um, so yeah, this was. I mean, I liked the idea of the premise, and I'm like, okay, cool. We get to see a story about these people, and then as I'm reading it, and I don't know what your thoughts are, but I want to get into those really quick. But my thought was like, oh, this is like a very small town type of story, like a Fargo-esque type of
Yeah,
thing.
I was getting like Mystery Alaska, Fargo, even the latest season of True Detective, which
Hmm.
was also kind of set in, I think that one was Alaska, right?
The Jodie
Or
Foster one.
yeah, um, some place where it gets very cold and icy. And,
Yeah,
yeah, it has that sim. I mean, you don't want to make everything lumped into one genre, but it seems like when Hollywood makes any kind of script or does something about someplace up that and kind of north and remote, it's always a town that has maybe 100 people and has very limited facilities, usually a one man or one person police force, that kind of stuff. So in this case, yeah, it seemed like very small townish. We have I think there's two people on our upset team that we're tracking with.
yeah.
And
Our main characters, Glenn and Janice, with a very obviously fake surname of Baginski,
yeah,
just so that
like
she could be nicknamed Bug. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
all right.
and not once did I see and aside from references to federal agencies, I don't recall the entire script any local police ever being involved.
No,
You'd think that if these people are specialized for border issues, there would still be a sheriff or a police department handling the actual policing of the community.
you'd think there'd be something like at least some sort of tier structure where it's like, okay, this has happened. We better inform local PD of this incident and whatnot, and the higher ups will determine who's got jurisdiction over the case to see it to conclusion. That type of, those types of logistics, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Super Troopers seem to give more time and effort to thinking out jurisdictional issues in that movie
Oh
when
yeah,
there was
between the
a
police and the
police
highway patrol. Yeah.
versus the highway patrol. But that was the one thing that kind of stuck out at me very for the first half of the script is how is local law enforcement n not being mentioned, even mentioned for any of this stuff. It was like that's kind of weird. These people are just random kind of border patrol, like a special border patrol focused on drug trafficking.
Yeah.
It's a very specialized thing. you know, you need to have, if you're a part of a joint task force, that generally means you work with your local police as well. So it's funny. That was kind of interesting.
It yeah, because that's one of the things I noticed is that there were a lot of areas unexplored in this, and and then at the same time there's also another area that's explored in a monologue because within the first we have an opening set piece of them kind of like on what's called is the ice bridge. So this is a bridge that during harsh winters between Canada and the United States, the lake kind of freezes over and you can actually physically walk across it or drive across it. It's pretty dense, and this is over on Lake Huron, if memory serves, and then I think the script references it as well. And so yeah, we have a set piece here where they're just kind of doing a normal patrol, and then they see some lights, and then both of them chase off, and they get the perp, and it feels like a Bond opening in some regard, but it's also got a lot of that meander chit chat of like, yeah, you're you, Janice, you're my partner in this, and you're leaving me alone to go join the DEA, and this is unfortunate for me because I'm gonna be short staffed and blah 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 and all that stuff while they grab this perp who's trying to make it across the border. And then we cut to, okay, well, now that we have the opening title sequence, the preamble, we're now at a school assembly where Janice is telling us what U.P.S.E.T is, and she's got this long monologue of all the agencies that they work with. And it goes from like, oh yeah, we work with the FBI, the DEA, the BIA, ATF, the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Patrol, Michigan State Police, Escabana Public Safety Department, Menominee City PD, Marquette, Delta, and Houghton County Sheriffs, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And then she's like, the floor is now open to questions. And my question is, do you think there are too many government agencies?
Exactly.
Because it's
what it does show
crazy.
you is that they took the time in the monologue to reference local police a couple times. I mean, but not once we're doing stuff.
Yeah, but once we get into the story, it's like, no, we're not going to involve any other characters. It's just going to be these two.
We get one agency represented out of that list through the rest of the script.
Correct. Yeah.
So and that one just happens to also be where she is supposedly going to be transferring, because this is our short timer, right? That's one of the ticking clock on cops who are partners, right? There's usually one who's about to get out. And in this case, Bug, Janice Baginski, Bug, the nickname, is on a short clock because she's going to be leaving small town living behind to go be a big city DEA agent.
Yeah, and he's a little murked by this.
Yep. So her partner Glenn is like PO'd about her leaving him behind.
Yeah, and the other part too is like we get no mention of any other staff members in this U.P.S.E.T team. As far as I can tell, it's just the two of them, and they're of equal rank apparently too. Like they're not really above each other in any sense of the term, like, or under each other. It's just, okay, they're equal rank partners. They work together. They're a team. They're in a set that reminded me a lot of like the Barney Miller set from that TV show, where it's a couple of desks and then there's a jail cell
and
in the
a
corner.
holding cell right in the it's not even a separate wing. The holding cell, it's almost, it reminds me of the old John Wayne movies. Not even like when when the sheriff's office was just a desk and the rest of and a holding cell that they could close. And then you could see the door to the outside. Within 3 feet of that was the desks, and at the end of 3 feet from the desk was the holding cell, and that's your entire like 10 by 10 sheriff's office.
Yeah. Like Mayberry had a more advanced office than this guy, and U.P.S.E.T does. So yeah, we're seeing, okay, it's very minimal, and I appreciate the context for this because it's like, okay, we have this team that doesn't seem to have a lot of resources. So that means that any investigation that they come up against, they're always underprepared or understaffed or what have you. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but now we need the threat. Like, okay, how can we put these characters in over their heads in this situation? And I think the premise for this doesn't really deliver on that, because what we spend for at least like the first 35 pages is they're just hanging out with Janice and Glenn.
Yeah, we are. I was we spent an inordinate amount of time before any kind of real action took off. We're getting, we got a lot of exposition, at the school assembly to give backstory on Glenn, that he's got a kid, he's got an ex-wife, they have kind of a slightly frosty relationship. Then we get a lot of exposition about I guess that she's moving, and there's some beats about like leaving her small town life behind.
Mm-hmm.
We meet some additional characters that are adding flavor to that. Like you've got the old friend of her deceased father who also seems to run a dive bar
A dive
or
bar in like a
something.
junkyard too, or something,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So I was a little confused. So I was confused on maybe, later on after reading the script kind of a second time. I was like, maybe I'm misreading, and maybe Goose is his character name.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he doesn't actually own the bar. He was just getting her there for the gathering, and is just a regular, because they don't make things like that clear. But the
They
bar
really
is so
don't.
full of the paraphernalia with references, like this bar, the small town bar, has pictures of her as a child with her father in his boat, and all these other things that are clearly trying to signify that her dad and whoever owns this bar have like a really long friendship and history before he passed away. And the only person they take the time to show who was like that was Goose. So I'm just kind of assuming that it was Goose's bar as well.
Me too, because again, there's a mention of like Goose and Janice's father served together in Vietnam. That's where their friendship began, or maybe continued because maybe they both from the same town. They both enlisted and then came back or what have you, drafted, what have you. And so yeah, he's trying to be like, when he shows up, he's literally showing up in a truck to pick up some junk. And then one of the things that stood out to me was like, oh, he's got the singing sea bass thing. It's like, does this still work? She's like, yeah. You're gonna throw it out? Yeah. I'll give you a buck for it. She's like, $1.50, and then he hesitates, and I'm like, really? He's hesitating over 50 cents, and she's just where she's clearly like messing with him. And it's like, okay, this is starting to read like a TV pilot, because we're addressing stuff that's very character focused, but it has nothing to do with the actual plot. And plot usually has another step up in a feature film compared to television, because television, it's like, okay, these are the people you're inviting into your living room, we want to get to know them, we want to come back and see them again and again. With a movie, it's like, just give me enough so that I can feel what they're feeling as they get into the weeds of the story, right?
Yep, it was a lot of world building time spent when we didn't need it. I mean, this, like you said, this is why it felt like this was episode one. At least the first third of the script felt like I was reading episode one of an 8 episode Netflix series,
Yeah.
where like, okay, we're getting to know all the small town beat life, small town life beats.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Goose, the old timer that was friends with her father who passed away. Here's the ex-wife who's got the frosty relationship with her partner. And all of these things will end up coming up later in the season because we're spending so much time with it now, because we have 8 episodes to breathe and do that kind of thing, instead of we've got hopefully an hour and 45 to 2 hour movie if we're pacing things right. And we should be kind of moving things along at a steady, well paced, like we can drop these hints in better ways than that. We don't have to just linger. And we would lingered a lot.
There's a lot of lingering, because this all goes into the fact that, okay, so we're we're setting up that this is her last or second to last day. Tomorrow's her last day. She nails a perp. They do their thing. Now she's packing up her stuff. She's ready to go. And Goose accidentally spoils that there's going to be a goodbye party for her at the local bar that maybe he does or does not own and operate at. We don't know. And that's Glenn invites her out to that, for one last drink type of thing. It's a big surprise party. They have fun. They shoot the breeze, exchange stories, get drunk, and it started reminding me of like some of the independent films I've been forced to watch the last couple of weeks, because I've had a bunch of friends, colleagues have been getting their movies on streaming services recently, and they're like, "Oh, we finally got it out. Here, go watch this. Give me your thoughts," type of stuff. And a lot of them are really bad. And a colleague of mine worked on a movie for Asylum that came out recently. We're just going to diverge a little bit because I have to explain how terrible this was. And it's called Snow White and the Seven Samurai. And
Oh, really?
and it's got Eric Roberts in it, who I guess they got him for a weekend. And everything about this is what I hate about not just Asylum, but also fan films. Because it's got not just a pacing that's unnatural, but it's got framing that's unnatural, it's got lighting that's unnatural, and it's got dialogue that's unnatural. And some of the dialogue in this script, Upset, felt very unnatural, that it matched up, fit in line with this area of quality. Even with the set pieces. And it just bothered me, because now I'm trying to read the script objectively as I can, but I just keep on seeing these little areas that pop up that make me go, nope, this is something that's shot on, like, I mean, not actually, but we use the old term, shot on a camcorder, where, the framing, the shutter speed doesn't look right, and now everything looks kind of like home movie-ish, but with more elaborate lighting that still doesn't make it look cinematic. And the big part that really clinched it for me is when they're closing up the bar, and it's just Janice and Glenn, and then she decides to go over to the jukebox, and then she just kind of plants one on him, and then they just go at it on the table. They cut before any copulation happens, but this is what they lead up to, and I'm like, yeah, this is your one night stand thing that you put in there, but you've done this, but it doesn't actually do anything for the rest of the script. You even when you kind of try to bring it up a little bit later on, it doesn't have any weight, because you've shifted gears and shifted priorities over to the actual investigation that has graced their doorstep, right?
It felt it almost felt like it was like a third or fourth rewrite in, where someone gave them a note that they needed some kind of romantic connection.
Yeah, something.
There's three main romantic conversation or beats through the entire script. There's this one at the beginning where we've got the drunken liaison. They have a sort of pseudo conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have later in the script another conversation. I don't know. I think that may or may not be past where we'd be talking about spoilers. But in that conversation, again, it doesn't go anywhere.
No.
The conversation gets shut down quickly, all leading to something I consider very unearned at the end. So to me, it almost felt like tacked on due to a note, like maybe he didn't even want this in the script. And maybe someone told him, it would work better if. And he took the advice.
Yeah, it just feels, I mean, it's definitely contrived. There's no two ways about that. Unfortunately, it feels contrived, and it feels like a gimmick that just isn't properly explored. The other part is that, the next day, what happens? Well, she shows up in the afternoon, still almost completely recovered from her hangover, but Glenn's been there since the morning.
Were you a little, unsure about what their actual hours were?
Yes, I had no clue what they were.
Because normally if you're working, and if you've got family, and I have family who works in police, like you work like a specific type of shift, right?
Yeah.
You're day shift, night shift.
Yeah.
And when you're police, it's usually like 3 days on, 3 days off, or a week on, week, like
week on, week off, 3 days on, 3 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off. Yeah, like that. And then you have like either a 3 set of shifts or 4 set of shifts per day, and you're slotted in for either 1 or 2 of those depending on the rotation. Oh yeah, I know all about that stuff.
Yeah, so that's where the term third shift comes in, right? That's the
Yep.
overnight, like weird stuff happens shift because that's like 11, like what is it, 11 to like 6 or something? Yeah,
Uh,
it's
well, I mean, they're broken up in 6 hour stints, so it's usually like it's like 11 to 5 or something of that nature. Yeah.
yeah, so that's third shift. And if I'm, you'd think from the initial scene in the script that they probably must be the third shift for like the overnight shift for this group.
Hmm.
But then there's nobody ever there except them.
There's nobody to relieve them. There's no shift huddle with regards to what happened during the day, what before I
Yeah.
got here. What do I need to keep an eye out for? Anything of that nature? None.
Yeah,
Nothing.
they're getting calls during the day, they're getting calls at night. There's never a reference to them like when she's coming back to work.
Hmm.
It's just him, it's just Glenn there. There's no like shift change thing where you've got the other crew leaving as they go in.
No, it's
I would
just
have liked to see that at least to make it more realistic to me.
it really is like a middle of nowhere small town thing where it's a town of 50 people, and the police department is literally open from 9 to 4, and then because there's never anything that happens during the off hours. And if there was an
And
emergency, you'd be diverted to like one of the municipalities that's an hour away, and they will send someone out.
and maybe that and they spent all that time at the school assembly where she gives her monologue about what they do.
Hmm.
It would have been super easy to put in something like, "Oh, your regular police force, around here covers things during the day, but at night they don't, they have to, they don't have enough people to watch, the lakes
Right.
where things are happening. So that's where we come in. We're the nighttime. While you're sleeping, we protect you from the bad guy." Something as simple as that would have at least, okay, they only work at night because the regular cops do this stuff during the day. Something like that to help justify why we see nobody else ever at that little police station. We never have anybody else on the police on this upset force that's even called like there's suspicions where they don't know who they can trust. That's kind of overblown a little bit.
Yes.
That summary and log line part I think is completely misleading in the way the script actually takes things, where it's not so much that they don't trust anyone else. It's that Bug gets gets it in her head to try to take the law into her own hands. It's,
Yeah,
you know,
let's get into a little bit of that because the inciting incident doesn't come until like almost 30-40 pages into the script. And before we get there,
and
there is a
what's the
scene.
old rule of thumb? Like it's usually like each page of script is like a minute roughly,
Each
right?
page is about a minute. You want to hit your
Yeah.
exciting incident within that first 15 minutes.
Yeah,
That's
so
where people understand what's going on. Yep.
we get the pseudo fake chase that has nothing to do with the later script before, like in the very beginning,
Right. It's just
which is
day in the life type of thing. Yeah.
day of the life kind of thing. But so our actual, this is the main plot point of the script, inciting incident, is like 45, probably 45 minutes in.
It
It's like,
really
wow,
is. And
that's really far in to start that.
I will say this though, there was one thing that threw out inauthenticity for me, and that is the little beats with the two guys eating poutine, and one burns the roof of his mouth and spits it out. Nobody who has poutine for the first time ever does that. It's too delicious. Every single person I met where it's too hot, they instead of trying to like spit it out, they'll either splash some water or a drink in their mouth, or they'll chew with their mouth open to try and vent
Yeah,
out the heat.
yeah, they'll suck in the air to try to like cool down around the hot stuff in their mouth. And these are supposedly, the people are supposed to be from Mexico. They say Mexican and they describe them as Mexican
Hmm.
cartel brothers in Canada. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's not like they wouldn't be used to eating hot food.
Yeah,
This
and we're not
isn't
talking like
some,
spicy, but just like temperature hot
yeah,
wise, they should be fine with that too.
yeah, and it was kind of a silly thing. I mean, and we spend an inordinate amount of time with them, like for what they represent, especially in the script in the end.
Hmm.
The idea of wasting what roughly probably plays out to around 10 minutes of screen time on nothing.
It's really just again TV writing. It's character. It's these two characters. These brothers are talking. One's fluent in English and Spanish. The other one is only fluent in Spanish. Um, the reason we're focused on these guys is because uh, we get a flashback without it properly being set up as a flashback, and that is Janice and Glenn get a radio call from one of the ferry operators, who's like, yeah, there's these people that were kind of suspicious, but like didn't seem kind of harmless, but they haven't come back yet. So that's giving me a red flag. So you guys want to come out and check it out? And they're like, okay, fine, we'll go do that, and they do. And while they're out there, they see this one Fausto, who's the one of the Mexicans, the Mexican that doesn't speak English, peeling out like a bat out of hell on a snowmobile.
Like, yeah, Fausto as his name is so on the nose too. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, come on, man.
And yeah, it was.
And there was this, that led to some kind of overly macho, like, silly action beat where Glenn is trying, after the one night stand, is trying to be more of a super cop to impress his partner.
Yep. And he takes out the guy in almost a near head-to-head collision. And they arrest him and they bring his sled in, the snowmobile in and whatnot. And then we immediately match the cut to some bowling alley, I guess, in Canada, where Fausto and his brother are talking about something. And Fausto, I guess, is in the midst of prayer because he prayers to every new location he goes to. And these two Canadian waitresses are kind of eyeing them. And then we get a whole little shtick here of how, one of them is really willing to throw themselves at Fausto, but he doesn't understand, and they're busy because they've got a job going to get to. And we follow that for 20 pages almost, or at least 15. Yeah.
There was there was a half-page description of him looking out at the snow.
Yeah.
And talking about how beautiful it is in Canada, and I was just like, okay, that's nice. This is unnecessary. Like, you are doing this is clearly a heist gone wrong kind of movie.
Yeah.
You don't waste time with having some kind of Terrence Malick looking at the scenery, loving the landscape moment. It is stupid and superfluous. Like, you're here to do Reservoir Dogs. You are not here to do Thin Red Line.
Exactly. And you give us no frame of reference for, let's see, they're in Mexico. Okay, where are they in Mexico? They're in a filthy, disgusting locale area. They get on a plane, they jump to Canada, they go outside, and it's pure serene and completely different. And now you understand the impact of why he's getting that visual, but that only works when you have the contrast. It doesn't work when we just start in Canada and then these two guys are there and then they go outside and like, oh, look at this is beautiful. What? It's like, we don't know where you've been before, really. We can make assumptions, but it's not the same as seeing it.
Yeah, it's like, where you can get away with that is like in Forrest Gump, where you're doing his talking to Jenny montage about all the beautiful things he saw traveling the world in his life.
And his run across America, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, oh, when I was in Vietnam, this happened. When I was running across, the Rockies and I saw the, mountains reflected in the pure, like, mountain lakes, Okay, that's earned. You've gotten that. You can do that. In this one, it's like, I don't know where these guys come from. I have no idea who they are. I know that one brother is overly religious in the eyes of the other. They're clearly on their way to do bad things. But you didn't give me any context that the older brother who's bad maybe sucked into the younger brother to this life and he's constantly, dealing with that conflict. Nope. All we get is just like, oh, you're a Catholic who prays all the time.
Yeah.
and I'm not. And now we've got to go to work. And then we spend time with them traveling to the place where, they meet up with the most stereotype of stereotyped like biker tweakers that we're supposed to be dealing, like, almost out of Grand Theft Auto.
If not out of Grand Theft Auto, out of like True Romance or something, right? Like, you just this is a very familiar setting. It's okay, there's a chick who's disinterested, who's doing her own thing. In this case, she's on her mobile phone playing a game. There's a big fat biker guy who's looking for a taste, and then there's the a messed up dude in the corner who's just riding out a high. It's like, yeah, I've seen this meal before. It wasn't very interesting or inventive, and it didn't play into what was going on, right? Because these two guys, they drive their truck out there. Fausto is told to stay in the car and lay low, and the other brother goes inside to sort of orchestrate the deal. Like they're supposed to exchange some like keys to merchandise and get money, and they're frisked, and it's they're talking about chili for some reason, and
It was the most like you mentioned indie movies, right? Where
yeah,
and this was one of the most indie movie scenes in the entire script, where this is giving away someone not ready for prime time. Like this is where I mean, look at my I'm gonna do my Tarantino moment
right.
where we're talking we're in the middle of this drug deal because you know it's a drug deal, right? You've got the everybody kind of picked up on that, but we're gonna take the time that we're gonna hand over. I'm gonna have the guy hand over his gun so we can all. And I'll have that chili now. Let's talk. That is a tasty bowl of chili. No, it's just. It was like, come on, this is so contrived. Like, come on,
Here's
I
keys.
want
Here's
to.
a bag of money.
Yeah, it is. You I want to as a person who's a consumer of movie and cinema, and I've seen a lot of independent movies. I used to, all right, AMC, especially in the fall when I worked there, would we book everything that could get an Oscar nomination, just because it was so slow. You were taking your shot at people just paying for tickets, and
Right.
I'd get in free, so I'd watch all these things, and I'd be like, oh my God, this is just so terrible.
Who
Like
put money
this,
behind this, right?
yeah. And I was like, what are we doing? At least it was, I was like, at least these were shot professionally because they were Miramax or sometimes either the other like a professional place would pick them up if they were up to standards for at least the look. And this is something where I'm like I could just picture what this really seemed like to me was a and I think we've talked about the fact that it seemed like a streaming show. This was like a compressed season of Fargo, the like FX show,
Yeah. No, Holly's thing. Yeah.
and not done as well as Noah Hawley does that one, where they were trying to have like look at these eccentric, Midwest and Northern people that you don't usually come into contact with, where you can get away, but they compress in a compressed format. You don't get any like there's no time to really let them be quirky characters that you bond with, and really to deep dive into those characters because you have to keep things moving because you've got a script pace you have to keep up. And so what it comes off as is just pretentious and stupid. It's just it's not like I feel like the way this is actually the script reads quickly.
It
Like
does. Yeah.
I actually the formatting, the layout, the word. I mean, this is a writer who I think can actually technically put things on a page in a way that I don't mind reading. I mean, this script is clocked in at 113 pages. You can get through it in an hour 30, hour 40 to 2 hours.
Easily. Oh
With
yeah. It
ease
just it
with
flows. Yeah.
it flows. Now, this is when I say because I know that there's a possibility that the writers could come back and watch this show, and I don't want to come off as harsh, like I'm making comments on them personally. I'm critiquing this where I feel like you may have gotten notes or you may have been trying to do things and they just didn't work. Because I feel like technically you have the capability of maybe polishing this and making it better. Because what I'm about to say about this scene is that it was terrible and it didn't work in the content. It doesn't work for this script. Its placement in the story with the jump non-flashback, non-linear cut where we just do a hard cut back to the guy we just saw get arrested makes it it's kind of abrupt and jarring and it didn't transition as smooth as he maybe thought it would.
Right. No, it definitely
It's
doesn't at all.
the time we spend with them like meeting the waitresses and doing that unnecessary, doesn't really add anything to the characters that pays off at all. Like there's nothing like, if that had been a pay like a setup to pay off later, you can justify it. Like that has to be something that comes back to play later. Nothing about it came back ever. Like the waitress didn't come back, the poutine didn't come back, the brother didn't, like that's where like I'm sure you maybe feel like the same way. If I'm getting this kind of flashback, I need it to set something up that pays off later aside from showing me the sequence of events that got him there. I want to have something that comes into play later in the like third act. And
I would have
nothing really was.
I would have also appreciated stakes on these two guys. Why are they doing this? Like, what is it for them? Is it money, fame, fortune, women? Is it to pay off a debt? Is it blackmail? Like, give me like that's one of the things that you can appreciate with something like the Fargo series is that it's not as straightforward as you think it is.
Yeah,
There's
like when we've got our religious brother, what if like in the conversation, like I'm only doing this for mama. Like I'm
right.
only doing this because we need the money to take care of so and so. I'm only, because clearly someone that religious who's very uncomfortable with what they're doing, why is he there? How did the brother suck him into it? Was it I'm taking care of you so the cartel doesn't kill you? Like there's some kind of context that we are completely missing and it's never offered.
Exactly, and this is where you get a detachment from the characters, right? Because whether or not they're an empathetic antagonist or they're just one that you love to hate, you need that setup to either to be empathetic or to love to hate them. And we get like 10, 15 pages of these two guys, and it doesn't give us any of that context at all. It's really just kind of like it's more like a slice of boring life as opposed to picking the most interesting moment of their lives at that time that reflects on the mission that they have at hand. And that's what makes movies very interesting is that you don't want to see your main character, busy buying shoes at the store and then just leaving. What you want to see is you want to see him buying shoes at the store because he fancies himself on the female sales lady that works there, and he's trying to work up the courage to ask her out or talk to her or some way, and that's why he's there. Because we see it's not just he's getting shoes whether he needs them or not, it's he's seeking something more in this particular location at this particular moment than what it appears on the surface. Everything that we've got with the Mexican guys, unfortunately, is very surface level. It's all superficial. It's just these are pieces that me, the writer, is moving into these positions because I need them to do this way to facilitate the plot and the stuff that I want to do with these other characters. And
Yeah, and then we get into a contrived chili, like we're sitting over a bowl of chili, and and then it turns into all hell breaks loose, shocked, right? Like
mm-hmm.
that, where the deal went bad. And
Yeah, they don't start off very good to begin with. So like, yeah, there's the brother gets a gun put at his head, but he's got his hand underneath the table where he's been holding on to another gun. He shoots everybody. Yeah, he
were
gets
you confused where he got the other gun?
yes, because I thought he
Because
handed one over.
yeah, they make a point of that he was searched, and that then he handed over the gun he had voluntarily. And they, in all the time we spent with the brothers previous to this, if he had a holdout gun that he had hidden, that's something where you'd want to show him like have him show up like his shirt sleeve where you have those little like pop out, guns or something,
hmm
where you see like you set off to pay off, right? That this guy was prepared, right? You don't just completely surprise, like you don't make a gun out of the ether. I don't know. Maybe I've watched too many heist movies where I get my setup and I see it pay off. But I was like, this guy, where did this guy, how did he get it under the table? Where did
Yeah,
this come from? Like,
it's
was it,
not like he
I
snuck
was,
into the building first, taped a gun underneath the table, knowing he'd be searched later because that wasn't established, and that would have been cool if he did pull that off. But
yeah, it's not Godfather where they hid the gun in the toilet or something.
right.
It's just all of a sudden the gun's in his hand and he managed to just shoot through the table to take out the leader of the bikers. And then and then our girl who was completely nonchalant before was involved and had the gun, was the one who had the gun to his head.
Right. She gets shot in the
And
knee.
she gets kneecapped literally. And then our other guy who was the third, guy who was allegedly stoned out of his mind then comes in and shotgun blasts everybody left, including the girl, I think it
and
seemed to
and then
imply.
he gets hit by a car, I think.
Yeah, and that's when Fausto, that we see that he had just been staring off into I guess assuming there's
A
I
window in
guess
that shack.
a
Yeah.
skylight or whatever. What do they call it? A moon roof, a sunroof, where he's staring into the great, beautiful Canadian sky. He gets into the truck cab, turns and like drives right through the wall of the cabin. Obviously, that's the smart thing to do when you don't know where your brother's at.
After hearing gunfire, yeah.
Well, you hear gunfire, you know your brother's inside there, so you just drive through the wall of the cabin and proceed to impale the uh, the guy with the shotgun and also clip the girl. And so
Yeah.
they're both gone. So again, he didn't know where his brother was and could have easily killed him too, but managed to hit everybody but his brother, who is bleeding out from from the shotgun wound to his stomach and chest.
Yes. And then his brother's just got enough information to be like, take the keys and go. You know the number to call, etc., etc. And then Fausto grabs the keys. He grabs the bag of money that's just there because it's right there. Why not? And instead of driving in the truck, he's on a snowmobile that I guess was in the back of the truck.
Yeah, so they were, I guess, towing the snowmobile, which, um, spoiler now we find out was what was concealing the cargo.
Yeah.
So now he's now obviously this looks really great for him as a cartel guy to have now absconded with both the illicit drugs and the pile of money. We know how well that goes over with people in cartels when that happens with their messengers, and how well it's probably going to go over with the people you were delivering it to. So that seems like a great idea for him.
It really does because I'm reading the script and I'm thinking, you know what would be the most interesting thing to do would be to have the to not make the character, or at least to have the character do the one thing, which is like call the boss and be like, it was an ambush. We don't know if it's the feds, we don't know what it is, but I got the money and I got the product. Tell me where to go. Like,
That's
because
what he should do. Yeah, that he
that
should be
gives you
calling his
something
cartel
interesting.
boss. Yeah,
Yeah, that gives
like
us something more interesting because how do they not have a phone between all of them right now?
well, and we know the girl had a phone because they made a point of showing her playing on it, playing a game, right?
Exactly, but the other two guys didn't have a phone, and he doesn't
His
say
brother didn't
grab
have
the
a phone.
yeah, he doesn't
And
say grab the phone, call this number. Take us to the next logical steps. Even in the case where if this is a drug sting of sorts or just an exchange, you know, contingencies are a thing because everybody's expecting to be double crossed whenever they go to these meets. It's just part of the game, right? Because they don't
yeah,
know exactly who they're dealing with, who they can trust, what's going on. So everybody's on their toes, so to speak, on eggshells.
I also really appreciate how amazingly directionally oriented this Mexican cartel guy who didn't want to be there was to be able to hop on a snowmobile and route from random Canada all the way down to the border zone that he was supposed to cross exactly to get to the house he was supposed to go to. Like this wasn't. I was
He
like,
has
how
no
did you?
GPS. He has no
Yeah,
no markers that he would be familiar with. It's like what if he's navigating by the stars. Holy crap, he's an expert.
yeah, it'd be like getting on a jet ski and managing to go from I guess a barrier island to exactly the right beach landing on the coast that you need to get to. It does. It's not that easy because he's also doing it at night in the
Yeah,
dark.
in the dark with overcast, especially in that area at that time of night. You don't see the stars much in that region of Michigan on Lake Huron because there's a lot of overcast because there's constant snow. It's really chilly. I mean, if it's cold enough to freeze the lake to create the ice bridge, yeah, you'll be lucky if you got a clear sky
And then,
at any hour.
and the other option would be that he was so well prepared in what he needed to do, if things, for what they were doing, that he knew the route from where they were meeting on a snowmobile, which, like you said, seems to imply a lot of contingency planning. Like, oh, if this goes wrong, here, learn the route, memorize it because that could happen. Take the money and then make the delivery and then meet back up with us. None of that was indicated that this guy, like, and if you're sending people to Mexico to be your messengers, I mean, from Mexico to Canada,
Hmm.
why would you pick people who can't speak English?
Why would you risk at least one of them not being able to speak English? Like that's the thing. Like you,
Yeah,
it,
it's
what's the exchange? It's like he's begging. He's like, listen, let me go to Canada. Let me take my brother. We want to get out of here. He can be a landed citizen, and I'll do whatever you want. Like that would have been great stakes. It'd be like, I'm taking my brother to Canada because I don't. He's a religious person. I don't want him caught in the cartels. Canada's the one place I know he'll be safe because, I mean, let's face it, our crime is way less frequent and less severe than some places in Mexico and parts of the United States.
Which is something that could have been fleshed out if this was an 8 episode streaming series, right? This is
Exactly.
what's our motivation. We spend a whole episode doing the backstory of the Mexican cartel brothers, getting them to the drug deal that went wrong. And this is where you need, like, if you're going to spend that time, you need to really spend that time.
You really do, because we have to figure out what's their world. How does it contrast to the world we just saw? How does it link together by the end? And how do you make sense of those two, of that linking, so that it works out? Because right now, what we've had here is we've had a story about Janice's last day, and then what she does the night before her final day, sleeping with her partner right before she's about to leave for the big city to be a DEA agent, and then we do a harsh cut from them nabbing this guy out on the lake to now it's this guy's story with his other brother in somewhere in Ontario, talking to waitresses before they go across the border to do an exchange of drugs and then get caught. So we now have two stories that have started one after the other, and now we have to come back, because we do come back, and Fausto is in the jail cell. Glenn and Janice are unable to communicate with him. They're trying to. She's using like Google Translate and typing in stuff and trying to speak to him, and he's not doing much. So she gets the dumb idea to hand over her phone so that he can type into it. And what does he do? He calls the guy the number that he's supposed to call, and he tries to leave a message in Spanish before they burst into the cell, take the phone back, and realize that was the dumbest thing they could have done. And so they're kind of lost, and the only thing Glenn is able to do is, like, the only person he knows that speaks Spanish is his ex-wife.
Yeah, who's like a Spanish teacher, apparently.
Who's like the principal and a Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
And so she comes over, and she brings their son and his best friend, Stu, who's apparently a troublemaker, who's asking weird, inappropriate questions at the assembly earlier, which was not worth mentioning because it was just eating up pages. Wasn't doing anything. And and while she's asking questions to help translate for Fausto, Janice decides to go inspect the snowmobile, Fausto's snowmobile. And she revs it a few times, and she realizes something doesn't sound right in the engine. She takes a toolkit, opens up the engine, and finds a well-concealed baggie of pills that have like 68 on it. And I'm like, oh, it's always, anytime I see a number that's like a 68 or something, I always wonder, can you flip it upside down and make it an 89? What's the real number? Because you don't know for sure, right? And what we end up having here is like, well, we never explored that idea. We're just like, yeah, it's 68, it means this, but it could be an 89, which means this. And there's usually supposed to be a dash, underneath where the number is to orient yourself on it. But yeah, that's one thing I thought the writer missed out on. But as he comes back, we get literally a moment. I think it's like on page 45 or 44, something around there, where basically Fausto says, "We have to get out of here. They're coming for you, and they're going to kill everybody." I'm like, that is your inciting incident. There it is. 45 pages into the script. That's where you have to land. That's where your first 15 should end. Right there with that guy saying that thing. They captured the dude. Like, if they took the opening scene where they just captured the random guy and they said, no, let's make that Fausto. Let's not scene jump to his story. Let's just make that Fausto. Let's get him in there. Let's get the ex-wife in there. She does the translation. She says, oh, my God. He's saying someone's going to come after him, that they know where he is, and that we're all going to die. There's your inciting incident. There's your first act break. If it's a television series, there it is, right there. Now you made me want to turn the page again. Now you made me want to stick around after commercials to find out, well, who's coming after them, and how many are there going to be, and will they actually kill everybody? Like, that's what I want.
Yeah, they really had the opportunity to just do that with, they had an arrest in the opening of the movie.
Yes, it was right there.
It should have just made it there. And, at the
Saved everybody
arrest,
30 minutes.
yeah, at the arrest, like you just have him like and make him able to speak English. You can completely cut out the whole superfluous. What I, late, what we find out is the whole point of why we had to have the ex-wife in there to be the one who translates, why we had that plot contrivance, was so that small town gossip could spread the knowledge of the cartel arrest,
Yep.
which, which doesn't really matter that much in the end.
Well, they don't do anything with it. That's the thing.
Y- Yeah, I mean, I guess it was so that Goose could know, but he would have known anyway because they drop things off with him before they move on to their next point in their plan.
Off screen and off page, like I don't remember when they dropped off the stuff with him.
There is a reference at the bartender, and this is another thing where, again, since we are just assuming Goose owns the bar,
Right.
the bartender says that Glenn and Bug came by and got supplies, including some for the cartel guy,
Yes, I remember that part.
which later on in the script, I guess for me is I have to fill it in with my head canon. Must have been when they spoke with Goose, gave him their stuff to hold for them, and did all that because there's nothing in the script about it. It just happened later,
Exactly. It's told to us. It's not shown. It would have been better if they had a scene where Glenn comes in. He's like, "Hey, I need 3 meals. Three? It's just one of the perps we got. We're taking them into this place. By the way, can you hold on to this for us? Our station is compromised. Just keep an eye on it. We'll be back to pick it up when we're
Or like
right.
there's a code word like where
Something.
Bug said that you would know what to do with this the way her dad always had you watch things for him.
Something
You
like
could do
that.
something like that where then the guy's eyes light up and he because we've established they have that history. That
Hmm.
would at least reinforce the special bond he had with her dad, which we remember when he was buying the guy's deceased man's Big Mouth Billy Bass, and was talking about his boat and how sad he was to see the boat going. That you can tie things like that. That's a character moment you get. You don't have to, and it would help at least give me a story beat in the script showing me when that show it becomes a big deal later.
Yeah, and
And
it's
I
useful.
really nothing that's a big deal should ever happen off page. I hate that. Like you should if it's something that's a big deal, it has to be shown. Like movie making is a show me first, tell me later. Like you've got to
Hmm.
use your visual storytelling. Don't just like do stuff where let me give you an exposition dump of something you saw off that occurred off screen.
Yeah,
No.
because there's you when you have an important moment, you're able to play around with tension and how people react to stressful situations. When you're talking about something that's as tense or stressful situation, it just doesn't have the same impact to the audience.
And
And
I will acknowledge there's some filmmakers that will do this via flashback where they will like, usual
mhm.
suspects where you'll recontextualize things by doing a flashback to show you something in a new light later on when you play with non-linear storytelling. Fine. I'm still seeing it though. I'm
Yeah,
still
you're
being
still
shown it.
exactly. It's like, oh, here's the one context of it. Oh, wait, this is what this other person said because they were there at the same time, and this is their perspective on it. And oh, the context is a little bit skewed, and you've got the Rashomon effect, the vantage point effect, the point of view uh, of the same situation from three different observers. That's not played at all in this type of thing. It's really kind of just straightforward. Where once they get him, and they're like, okay, well, where are we taking him? Well, we're going to take him. I guess they're taking him back to the cabin that he's, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they take him back to the cabin, or they're
They
about to.
no
No, the
all
other
right,
guys.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's jumbled because there's a lot of
yeah.
characters that keep
All
on
right.
getting introduced every 20 pages.
Yeah, so after we step away from Janice, Bug, and Glenn, who are doing all these moves off screen, right? This is where we're getting all this off screen decision making. Well, just to clarify, all right, so Janice gets in her head that they should handle this case themselves because these drugs her father passed away from an overdose a fentanyl based overdose because he couldn't get pain meds anymore and he had chronic pain. We get a whole monologue on that. She's telling someone, I assume that it doesn't make a point of saying that Margaret, who's the ex-wife, was translating what she was saying.
It,
She's just speaking to someone who doesn't speak English, like this whole life story of
yeah.
hers. Because I mean, correct. Because I went back and I checked. I didn't see any notation that Margaret was like translating as she spoke. So it was the next point after she finishes her whole monologue telling her father's story. Then she says, "Now tell him this when I say it." You're like,
Yeah.
okay.
There's something set up where it's like we're focused in on Janice, but we are supposed to assume that the interpretation is occurring as she's speaking. But it's just, but for the visual perspective, it's just between Janice and Fausto for this point. And so she goes to this thing where, like, yeah, he has chronic pain from time in Vietnam. He gets injured. He has to get on pain meds. Then the FDA no longer approves those pain meds. And so he has to get them from another country, and they're not made the same way. They got a little bit of fentanyl in them, and someone screwed up the dosage in one of the pills, and he died as a result. So she's got this drive to put an end to whoever's moving these types of pills into her community. And it's supposed to be this badass type of determination monologue, but doesn't come across that very well.
Yeah, I also have the age. I'm guessing that they're never really clear on her age.
30s, like
They
that's about as
yeah,
right.
they make 30s. They have a reference comes up later from some TikTok youngins calling her a MILF, and so that should date that is telling me that she's probably mid 30s on. But she's supposed to be the child of a Vietnam veteran. That's a big window, right? That could be anywhere from the early 60s all the way to the mid late 80s.
Well, late 60s to, yeah, mid 60s to late to yeah, if he's a veteran, you'd be 74 was when that war kind of ended. So yeah, you've got mid 70s to mid 80s of when her time of birth would be, mid to
Yep.
late.
As an example, my father was in the army at the time of Vietnam. I was born in the 80s. I have younger brothers who was born more mid 80s. So like that's the one, and I knew some people who worked with him who were same age were having kids regularly up until like the late 80s or so
Yeah.
that's the outside window. What seemed a little odd was we find out like after we leave. All right, so we get this part where she after this whole like she dumps her whole backstory in what I'm sure is supposed to be a very moving monologue that she's supposed to deliver with a lot of emotion. It came out a little stilted, but a good actor could probably take those words and make them more effective.
Mm-hmm.
That on the page they read a little less impactful, and that's something where sometimes the actor makes the difference, and the writer does a decent job, but the actor elevates the material. So that would be a good example of elevating the material. That kind of speech is something an actor could probably really make work or make terrible. It's going to be in between, like that range is going to be up to the actor to kind of work with. But so
Yeah.
we decide now. She convinces Glenn, who apparently will do whatever she says, that they are going to go rogue, even though it's her last day on the job, and do this investigation completely on their own. And we're not because, and bear in mind, not because they're suspicious any other agency is like on the take or involved or there's some kind of grand conspiracy. It's only because she's sick of the bureaucracy involved with fighting the drug war.
And also, she's not going to get the credit for it either because of the bureaucracy. They're just going to do their stuff, they file the report, and then someone else is going to take it, and it's just going to be a file in a cabinet as opposed to an actual resolution.
Yeah, and
And
so that's why I brought up earlier in the show how that the log line and the summary implying that they were like, we don't know who to trust. We're uncovering this layered conspiracy. Like we've seen that in heist and drug movies before, where who do we trust? They've corrupted the system. No, we have no. There's they as their protagonist have no evidence of any system corruption at this point in the story. None.
None. And the thing is, we have no frame of reference to it. So we don't see them do a case where the DEA comes in and says, okay, we'll take it from here. There you go. And then that's the end of it. Like, we don't see anything that suggests that they're doing anything to resolve the issue or get justice or what have you. We have no frame of reference to that. Instead, we get 20 pages of a school assembly and then a goodbye bar party. And then we get back to the actual story. So in this case here, what we have is we have a drive from Janice, who is basically escalating the story unnecessarily for ego or I don't know what. She's got it in her mind, and it's a brand new character trait that's presented here. It's not something that's been established yet. Keep in mind, we're almost an hour into the what would if this were a movie, like we're at 60-page mark at this point. And so now we're on this kind of road trip where, okay, we're going to start taking him, we're going to take this guy elsewhere. And I was a little vague onto where exactly they were going to take him, because we have this moment where they're driving out, they stop, they put him into the trailer, she takes the sled with the drugs in it, presumably still, ditches her upset jacket, and then drives to a house and just shows up there. And I don't know about you, but I was really lost at this point.
Yeah, and I think this is now when we jump to our other set of people. And
Yes. Well, then we jump to two DEA officers, right, at a party.
yeah, and we've heard, all right, so we've in theory been introduced by reference to this DEA officer, at least one of them, who is named Gabe or Gabriel. He's the one that had recruited Janice to leave the small town upset team and become a DEA officer. And now again, this is all happening so away from our protagonists, so they don't know this. After some random, just I guess what's supposed to be cute introductions of of these people,
Yeah.
he we find out that Fausto was calling Gabe on a burner phone he has,
Right.
because he has his phone. He hears a ring. He reaches in his pocket. He takes out his main phone, and there's nothing's happening. And then he reaches deeper in her pocket, pulls out a second phone, which I think everybody's kind of sophisticated enough to know. You can visually just see a burner phone and kind of know what it means. And
Exactly.
and so he's got a voice. Like he opens it up. It's too late to answer, but he has a voicemail, and he listens, and it's Fausto speaking in Spanish about what happened, which we saw earlier in movie, probably approximately about 8 minutes earlier, probably 8-10 minutes earlier.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or yeah, almost. Yeah, about 8-10 pages earlier. That's when it's done. So they're close enough together for you to kind of register it. But again, it's a time shift, right? Because we've
Yep.
already seen all this other story happen, and then we cut to this new set of characters, and he's missed the phone calls just seconds ago. And
And in fact, actually, we meet them for a while before he misses the phone call, because we meet them at a bar
yep.
where girls are getting drunk. He's talking to one of his coworkers who is getting super drunk to the point of passing out. We see him then bringing the coworker back to the hotel room, I guess they're staying at, or whatever they describe it as, condo, hotel, whatever. And he's, like and that's when his phone rings. So from when we meet with them on screen to where he's at, I'm guessing at least an hour or two has passed,
At
because
bare
he
minimum, yeah.
he had to get him home from the like he was out drinking, to the point of getting him like from at the bar, just like drunk off his skunk, to a vehicle to drive him home, to then take him back into the house and put him down on a couch when the phone is ringing. Time has passed, and so we're time shifting again with no frame of reference. And it's not like it's that hard to get. Once you see the phone call, you know exactly where we're at in the timeline of events. But it's unnecessary. But what it's supposed to do is, obviously, we've heard this guy's name dropped previously with Janice and Glenn, so we know he's supposed to, and to the point where he was the one who recruited her. So she's choosing him. That's one of the things the script is basically implying, that she's choosing him and DEA life over Glenn and small town life. And so now we are led, based on this visual and auditory clue, to suspect that this guy is clearly corrupt, right? That he's working for the cartels because Fausto called him.
Right.
And now we have to be immediately super suspicious of what he's going to be doing to our main characters to try to thwart them in their investigation. But before we get back to that, we have to cut to a whole new set of characters to be introduced.
Right.
Oh,
Curry. And what the heck is he doing? He's somewhere in
yeah,
Canada who's got a marijuana farm and then a meth lab underneath it.
yeah. Cully. His name is
Cully, sorry,
Cully. Yeah,
Cully.
Cully. Yeah, who apparently is running the most sophisticated, like super teched out greenhouse for a biker that you've ever seen. And that's where we also get an interesting, like, we're establishing that he's knee deep in the drug trade because he's getting a call from a Chinese speaking person where they're speaking in code about him purchasing large quantities of fentanyl.
Which he's calling
And
like AB something or whatever. And
yeah,
it's
which is completely it's unnecessary, right? Like, we know that there's a drug trade going on from the fact that they found pills in the snowmobile, right? We know
right.
that's what it is. She just gave a whole monologue that it was fentanyl and how dangerous it was. We do this whole unnecessary beat with him talking to the Chinese operator just for him to have other biker people come up and tell him what happened at
At the
the drop
cabin.
that went wrong,
Yeah.
which that by itself tells you he's a drug dealer. You don't need to do it twice
Not only
at
that,
all.
it's really it's not proper form for even the code used for it, because again what we learn is that this is a Chinese operation that's being used by the Mexicans as mules, and it's also being facilitated by this guy Cully in Canada. So they wouldn't be using anything that they wouldn't be communicating auditorily. It'd be fake invoices, dummy corporations, things of that nature that they'd be doing all remotely, digitally, all that other stuff that would be framed in such a way where even if it was seized by the authorities, there's enough doubt in regards to the product being discussed on the invoice that they couldn't really nail anything unless they had physical evidence to do so. That is usually what would be done. It wouldn't be done in an audio recording where NSA would be wiretapping and be like, yeah, this is a very suspicious conversation. We should probably get a little bit more eyes on this guy. you know, it felt to me like inauthentic, a red flag of sorts. Like too lazy for these people to be doing it this way, or too arrogant for them to be doing it this way if they are supposedly supposed to be as powerful as it's alluded to in the script.
I just don't like being, having to sit through two things that are telling me the same thing script wise. Like,
Yep.
this purchase with the Chinese doesn't play into the movie ever again.
Nope.
Ever.
Don't even get any cool
So
Chinese assassins coming in to do
exactly.
anything.
So what it's supposed to be showing you is that Cully's the man in charge and that he can do volume, right? That he's not just a pushover, right? Because he can negotiate them down.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not important to the story at all. Like, him being able to be the boss and negotiate serves no story element ever for what he does later in this movie.
It
Per the script,
no.
it's an unnecessary, like, it actually seems silly. Like, if you're that kind of high level guy, you don't get involved, of course. So then we find, like, as the guys come, like, we get a tour of his operation for some reason. Like, it's almost like Breaking Bad porn, where
Yeah.
you're like seeing his meth lab and you get in, like, the script is going in detail and like describing how beautiful this setup is and everything.
It's like
Okay, that's
sterile
cool.
and stainless and everything. Oh yeah, it was just
It was like, okay, I mean, that, I guess that does have a payoff later. So I can't really, it's, my cardinal rule of, if you do a setup, you have to have the payoff. So I guess there is a payoff for doing that. I don't know if if the juice was worth the squeeze, so to speak. But
oh, girl next door reference. Okay, yeah.
I love that movie. I unabashedly think it's a great movie. But so uh we find out that he gets informed of the drug deal gone wrong, and this is something I don't like is we find on the we are told through expositionary dialogue on the page, but nothing said by anybody that the girl who was the victim in this Mexican standoff gone wrong is his daughter.
Right.
Like no one says that at this point. Like there's a description where it says like Cully looks back into the bed of his truck because he's taking the body home, and he looks at the body of his daughter. And it was like, well, you've got to say that. You've got to have somebody say that. You can't just like imply like there's
Yeah,
a
like
lot of different ways this girl could have had a special relationship to him.
get him into the
And
cab
they
of his car and have hanging from the sun blocker or sorry the sun visor a picture of him and the chick that we just saw shot together
that's like
in
that says
embrace.
like number one dad or
No one
something like
dad or something. Yeah.
something silly you'd get on Father's Day. And it's easy to do it visually that way, but we don't get a description that does that. Maybe a good director or would have added that as a touch when if they're shooting this movie. But you've got to have something because you're supposed to have an emotion like that scene is supposed to have an emotional weight when he's looking back at the body that you won't get because it's only described on the page and is not given anywhere for the audience. Like the the way the characters talk to him while he's cleaning up the scene to get the body, you this girl obviously was special to him, but it could have been a girlfriend, it could have been, a daughter, it could have been, there's a lot of different ways you could read a relationship into it that there some kind of relationship, but we don't know what it was. Like my initial reading was like ex-girlfriend
Yeah.
because the way they were like being so sensitive about it, but and talking about like had you talked to her recently, it doesn't read as father daughter. Like because why would a father get his daughter into that life? Like like no one was weirded out that she was at the drug deal, right?
And she
So
was so disinterested in it too. It's like, okay, did he force her there? Like that's even worse, right? Like there's so much context missing. But with this dynamic, and when we do get the information, it comes in way late, like way too late for us to even care at this point.
yeah, and that we get that it's done as a way to get and we talked about this a little before the show, like the way that is finally delivered to the audience is done to try to circumnavigate a problem that he runs into, and when we'll talk about why it was silly when he
We're getting
does
pretty
it, but
close to it because there's only
yeah,
one
oh
set
yeah,
piece to cover before we get to that part. But yeah, keep going, sir, please.
yeah. So Sully is so Cully. He's so memorable that we've both completely botched his name like five times. Cully. Cully is upset and you know is decides to go down back to wherever like where the delivery was supposed to happen because he wants his drug, right? He at least want the money's gone, the drugs are gone. He wants his drugs at least, right?
Yep.
They're his stuff. Before we get to him, we now cut to Glenn, Janice, and Fausto driving along and what is I guess supposed to be some kind of just like character beat to um I guess orient you to where you're at. We get which is going to come up later. We get the bridge, the Mackinac Bridge, which becomes this is our first introduction to it, and we have the funniest way for a writer to like he's talking to someone who doesn't speak English and he's describing like this is the biggest suspension bridge and this and that. Like we're getting all this like Hermione level exposition dump
Yes. And
about this bridge.
under the guise of if I wasn't speaking, he'd probably be even more nervous than if I were speaking. It's like, yeah, you're trying to show off here. It's very transparent.
Yeah, and then we have I guess something that's supposed to humanize Fausto in a lighthearted character way where Linkin Park comes on and he speaks he does the chorus in perfect English. Probably obviously because he's heard the song down in Mexico too, and they're all like, oh, they're all taken aback, and we go, and so we're traveling the bridge to go wherever he's supposed to deliver the snowmobile. Then we get a beat where we're cutting to small town gossip network,
Yep. all the characters we kind of seen but haven't seen are talking about, oh yeah, so Janice and Glenn there, they took the Mexican fella out, you know.
Yeah.
It's just very
Yeah,
Fargo style.
we've got ice fishers, we've got grocery clerks, we've got, people at the town dump. We've got, I think, the bartender we talked about a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. And they're all just, there is some truth to the fact that gossip travels at the speed of light in a small town. So it is true, but again, no reason, no payoff from this. Like we get this beat, we spend time showing a little montage of small town gossip. Matters not. No, no purpose at all for
Yep.
the show for it.
So that happened. Essentially, that's what happens. Like everybody in the audience be like, okay, cool. Okay, so that happened, and nothing. Okay, nope. None of them gets in. No guy goes through town being like, "Hey, over here's the gospel," and then grabs someone like, "Where'd you hear this information? Like, tell me where did I find these people?" No threats of that nature.
Yeah, yeah, no, like Gabriel from the DEA, who's our suspicious agent now, coming into the small town, kind of talking like, "Hey, had you heard about any of this?" And like getting, almost like a Fargo montage where Francis McDormand was talking to like, "Oh, don't you know?"
Or like, yeah, the one guy who's talking about, yeah, the dude, he kept on saying he wanted to have sex, and that he was really jiving for one. Like just that
yeah,
long,
yeah. So you
ongoing
had sex with the little guy? Yeah, the little guy.
little guy. Yeah, like you don't have anything funny or interesting about that gives you a clue as to like the pattern of what's going on and who's doing what. It's just nope. Okay, so gossip in a small town. Very,
Yeah.
very thankful for that. Okay,
Yeah,
now.
and then we get our next, I guess, what is sort of an action beat, which is Bug Janice like making the delivery to our TikTokers.
Yes, these two 19-year-old jacked up muscle guys who I guess they do fitness TikTok videos.
Yeah, and here's something that's funny. Both me and Script are completely unsure who they're related to one of the bad guy characters, but we can't figure out who.
Yeah, they keep talking about dad, and I'm like, well, which one's the dad? Who's the dad? Is it Cully? Is it Gabriel? Is it someone else that we've mentioned? Is it Goose? We don't know. Like we have no
Yeah,
clue.
we don't know. No clue. They just talk about dad and somehow dad was involved with this drug deal that was supposed to happen. Because you'd think Cully would mention his sons if, when he's talking about his daughter, like, at least I still have my sons, but he doesn't. So I don't think it's Cully, but
I don't know.
it's
Like you
we
and I,
have
we
no
have no
idea.
clue.
It's like if you're gonna make a point that these guys were doing this and were notifying their dad, you need to tell us who their dad is. Like, come on.
Yeah, like give us
But
a last name or something, right? So that at least we can, as the reader, can understand who these guys are. But it's like what, Cole and Travis, I think, are the names.
yeah, yeah, Cole and Travis
And so
are
they're
the
immediately just hitting
two.
on Janice.
Yeah, that's where we get the MILF reference from these guys, which was setting our age range for Janice. We also get that here's an important beat. Fausto was supposed to, like, they were gonna have him make the delivery, but he has a panic attack, so he can't. So that's why Janice steps in and pretends to be the delivery person. And they bring her inside because they're suspicious that it wasn't a Mexican cartel representative making this delivery.
And she's
S-
disappointed because the guy in charge is not there. It's these two boys.
Yeah, and then we get a little bit of a hiccup where she gets found out,
Mm-hmm.
and they proceed to wrestle with her, get her gun away from her, and then one of the guys fires a warning shot to get her to stop fighting, and they tie her up.
They tie her up with duct tape and throw her
Yeah.
upstairs.
Yeah, so we get the warning shot sets her partner is there on the outside. Here's the warning shot. He decides, like he's going to go in after her, but he has to. They had a trailer, by the way, to bring the snowmobile because that's what they were still carting the drugs in. The snowmobile's now in the driveway. He puts Fausto in the trailer and locks it so that he can go try to help his partner.
And before he does, he hears a ringing coming from Janice's jacket that she left behind because she left her phone in there. And who's on the phone calling? Well, it's Gabriel.
Gabriel. Yep.
And Glenn gets really suspicious of this because he's like, well, why are you calling her, and he finds out, oh, he's returning a call, and then he happens to know all these details about the case that they're on, and they haven't reported it to anyone. And all Gabriel's saying was like, well, we're the DEA, we know everything. And then Glenn plays it off, well, we don't know. We didn't find anything with this Mexican guy, so we're just kind of going through the motions with him. So if there is any news, just let us know, and if we find something, we'll let you know, type of deal. And then they hang up, and then Glenn's immediately suspicious of Gabriel, thinking that he's in on it, and as a result, he unhitches the trailer, takes the SUV, and drives to the location to go see what's going on with Janice. And he's just saying to himself, she's okay. She's got to be okay. She's okay. And he just starts knocking on the door saying, I'm looking for a fugitive. Have you seen a person suspicious? And that gets into another little set piece where Janice manages to get out of a window, roll off the roof, and fall onto the ground.
This is another thing where it just screamed kind of streaming series to me.
Yeah.
This is like such a TV moment. Like you've got the door cracked. You've got Officer Glenn talking to one of the TikTok fitness influencers through the door. And then all of a sudden you hear some thud, and then I can see it like it's a nice suburban house with one of those where the upper level has the like sloped little roof right above the porch to the door.
Yep.
And
The
she just
awning.
roll, and I can see her just rolling right down that onto the ground on the snow, and then everybody just pausing for a beat, like taking it in before all hell breaks loose because of this happening. That is a TV moment.
It
That's,
really is, because what happens is, like, Travis, he using, I guess, Janice's gun, starts shooting at them, and Glenn is trying to protect Janice, so he like grabs her and shields her, and they get behind the truck. And what Janice does, she grabs Glenn's gun, and then just one shot hits Travis right in the chest,
in the chest. Yep.
and
And so she drops him.
and
And
it
then
freaks her
Glenn
out.
makes a yeah, and then Glenn makes a he calls it in,
Yep.
including with the address of where they're at. And then they leave
Before the paramedics or anyone else shows up,
before anyone gets there, because Glenn's like, we gotta go. We can't be here. Even though theoretically her service weapon is still on scene
yep.
with Travis, who's dead, having been shot by another officer's service weapon. Like, there's going to be questions. Those guns are ballistic tested. They'll match it. Like, they're going to know who took them out. So we've got that. They leave. And we never hear our cops responding, like, ever to this location. In fact, later in the script, we have bad guys getting to this location, but no officers, no paramedics. It's the weirdest thing.
We have that twice, not just at that location, but at the cabin as well. The bad guys go to the cabin. They're like, oh, better clean this up and figure out what's going on. And
Yeah, at least in a remote cabin, you can kind of get away with that.
yeah. But
But
this
in a
is
situation
suburb.
where in the script we had a cop frickin' call in on police band radio, shooting this location, like that's
Need an ambulance, one shot fired, suspect down, all those
Yeah,
types of things. Yeah.
I believe they even have him say that in the script.
No, he does say that. He just doesn't give his name. And then he's like, we got to get out of here. And then that's when he lays down on Janice the conspiracy of Gabriel and the DEA. And they also realize when they get back to the trailer, Fausto has jimmied his way out because the toolbox inside the trailer he used to get out of one of the vents in the back. And then they basically are just like, we're going home, which takes them back to the Mackinac Bridge. And this is kind of where we have to kind of stop covering more of the script, because this gets into your third act climax and the spoiler stuff. But there's a red flag in it, and that is when they're approaching the bridge, they get surrounded by some guys on bikes, which are considered like winter Viking warrior type deals, and they're demanding for Fausto. And they're like, well, Fausto's not here. And then there's that action line, well, Fausto clings onto a knife as he's and starts to pray. And I'm rereading the previous 10 pages because I'm like, well, wait, they lost Fausto. Where is he? Why is he here now? And then we find out, oh no, that's a line that was really left in there by accident, because he's actually somewhere completely different area.
Yep, and that's where I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I did look it up just to say, here, this was the line, Glenn, and his dialogue, as he calls it over to the SUV, calls it in on the radio, requesting immediate medical assistance, 4242 Marquette Circle, teenage male, single gunshot wound to the chest, repeat, immediate assistance required. like no way there shouldn't have like tape everywhere. This is a homicide investigation. Like there should be swarms of people by the time we get back to that location with bad guys fall in later on. It's like, uh, I'm I'm just so annoyed thinking about that now because we do have a beat where we get bad guys arrive at this scene and get told what happened.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
right.
and they and they see the kid and they're covering him up, like covering up another body. And I'm like, how is nobody already here? Like police should have been here within 5 to 10 minutes for this kind of report. This is a gunfire teenager shot in the chest report. Like,
Yeah, this. I mean, what are they thinking? Like, oh, it's a busy day today. Well, we better take our time. It's just it doesn't. Yeah, there are opportunities for further escalate the drama were completely sidestepped here in favor of just sticking with the main two. And as I was reading this, I was like, okay, this feels like a TV pilot and not a very good one. And this guy is clearly heavily influenced by Taylor Sheridan of sorts and Peter Gould for Breaking Bad and all that.
yep.
But I don't think he's picked up on the substance of those influences, why those shows are influential, why they resonate. He's kind of just, again, this is another thing that for some strange reason my generation and the generation following me keep dwelling on, is that they're looking at stuff superficially. They're not trying to look deeper beyond what's on the screen and what's on the page.
And it doesn't lean into absurdist enough. Like it does, like if you were gonna go, Coen Brothers style Fargo, you
Right.
have to lean into kind of some of the absurdist black humor. You need to like just lean into it. This is dark territory, but make it dark humor. Like go for it. There's twinges of this in the script, like having the TikTokers doing TikTok video. Like there's absurdist elements all the way, like having the chili conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that sprinkled in, but it's afraid of doing that, and it's not serious enough to be a gritty crime drama because it has some too much absurdist stuff. It's not absurdist enough to be a black comedy where it's just leaning into that. And then we're not going to talk about it in detail, but the payoff is so weird, over the top, and contrived
And
that it just
also like a deflated too. It just doesn't
yeah.
feel earned.
Oh, and the very, very payoff is super unearned, like out of nowhere unearned. Really a problem unearned. Like people would be going, "What the f movie?" You like, yeah, because it comes again. We talked about this before we started. Like we can't talk about it because it's too spoiler territory. But the decisions that lead to this end sequence, the last like what would be the last 12 to 15 minutes of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
are just they keep it's like re-raising in poker where they keep re-raising the stuff that makes no sense and doesn't work.
Yeah, there's actually like part of me is wondering, like, did the guy not know how to do this third act anyway? So he's like, I'll just throw on a movie, and then he sees Rumble in the Bronx and is like, yeah, the ending that one that can kind of work for this. I can make that
Oh
work.
shit. Yeah, I get what you're saying with Rumble in the Bronx. Yeah, that
uh,
fits. Um like a complete like that's out of left field.
yep.
And then you get some of the decisions I'm not going to talk. I mean, I won't say what they are. Cully's character starts making weird choices that seem completely unearned. Like I
I don't
don't
even
get
know
it.
what he's doing. I was trying to make sense of what he was doing. Like it just, yeah.
We get and then we get, like I said, the biggest what the f turn in the last page of the movie that has just I was flabbergasted on how that was in there.
Yeah.
And there was no, they didn't do anything in the in the final showdown to justify that last page end to make it make sense in any way with what you see on screen. There's a
Right.
lot of there's a if I
There's a
have
lot going
to
on. Yeah.
if I have to give one master critique of this script besides that the stuff we've talked about, it's way too much happens off screen. Like you're you're leaning into like I would say 60 to 70% of the monumentally important choices and things of this movie are happening off screen, and it doesn't work
It
because
really doesn't.
you've got to see it. You've
No,
got to have something.
it's again, this is where I get into like, okay, this feels like TV, but like not good TV. And
I could see somebody like Noah Hawley doing like like they could this could be the backbone of a Fargo season.
yeah, or its own little mini series called Upset, where every episode is a strange little something's going across the lake.
Yeah, you'd
Crime.
either have to go like full on True Detective like grungy noir, or you'd need to go absurdist Fargo.
Yeah,
You've got
I
to go.
yeah
It doesn't work
in the
skidding
middle.
the line like as a standard procedural. It has to be one of like for something this thing, it's almost like a Twin Peaks kind of thing. Go really Lynch style, like make it weird. Lean into the weird. You've got two people who are apparently patrolling an entire Great Lake border. That's kind of a big deal for two people to handle. Like, how about
Yeah,
we like
and
let's go full Lynch and do some weirdness with
or
it.
go a little Baywatchy, where you have like someone scheming to like, I'm going to try and migrate these fish that are normally on the northern side of the border to the southern side U.S. border, because then the fishermen there will get more money for the fish they sell, and I'll take a cut of it because I've manipulated the migration of a fish. And it's like, well, how is something like Upset supposed to stop that? Like lean into something absurdist, a little bit silly, but that also plays into the fact that this is the small town. People like small towns for a number of reasons. One, they're a little bit more peaceful, quiet, but they're also contain the most eccentric of people you'd expect because there's so little actually happening. Because they have to generate their own kind of internal drama. And you don't see the same thing in a city because everybody's so busy. The minor indiscretion becomes a huge thing just because it inconveniences. It has a ripple effect to millions of people within the city, whereas a minor thing in a small town means nothing, but some person can blow it up because they have nothing else to do that day. That's the contrast that you need to play with. Something like Upset as a premise for if it was a television series, because again, this feels like a TV pilot until you get to the last 5 pages or so, where you're like, yeah, he's wrapping this up to be a feature film, but everything that he has set up, the way that he has paced it, the way that he has spent time with the characters, says that this is a world a little bit too big for the purposes of this particular plot. And not that the characters are very good that I want to see again, but he's doing the work to make us feel like these are characters we should come back to again.
And it's it's actually a good backbone for maybe to take a streaming like for an 8 to 10 episode streaming season.
Mm-hmm.
And because this is like, this is basically an outline to me. I mean, it's a full script,
Yes.
but it's an outline for a season of a streaming series where you've got like basically this would be the script Bible. And then we're gonna pull it and stretch it into the episodes and take the components to make a coherent 8 to 10 episode series out of this. Because you've got character elements that could work if they were fleshed out and they took time and care to kind of think things through. You're gonna have to add backstory to like everybody. You have so many characters, like this is way too many characters for a movie of
Mm-hmm.
this type.
Yeah.
Like having throwing Cully in there, throwing the TikTok kids, whoever their dad was, all the bikers that show. It's just too much. This isn't like this isn't if you want to make Sons of Anarchy and have that many characters, you better make it a TV show.
Pretty much, because you could easily, from this script alone, you could do from there's four scenes between Janice and Glenn that you can make their own episodes. And then on top of that, you can do an episode on Gabriel, you can do an episode on Curry, and you could do an episode on the Mexican guys, and that would give you like 7 episodes right there, easily.
Yeah,
I'm talking 35, 40-minute episodes, just setting up who they are, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and how they get to point A, right? And that
yeah,
it's
and
right
if
there.
you want
Yeah.
to do like you have episode 1 is establishing that it's Janice's last day, and you're doing all that life stuff, and that's a whole episode, and then the end of the episode is arresting Fausto, and it ends like, who is he? And then the second episode is like
This is
You know,
Fausto.
you have him in, you have him like in the holding cell, and you zoom in on him like when they're trying to ask him questions. They're like, and he doesn't speak English, and it's like, how does this guy get here? And then you do a flashback episode for a whole episode with Fausto and
Hmm.
his brother, leading to how he got to Canada. You don't even do the drug deal yet.
No, just to
You just
Canada. Yeah.
just to Canada, just how he got sucked into being a cartel guy. Then the second episode, like the third episode, you have her discover the pills because right now we don't
Anything
know
of
there were
that. Yeah.
pills yet. You know, so when she discovers the pills and she does her speech on that, like that's when you can do the flashback to Fausto and the drug deal gone wrong, and that's the climax of episode three. And then the end of episode three, you have Fausto look at them and be translated saying, "They're all gonna come and kill you. They're gonna kill us all."
Right.
There's your cliffhanger for episode three. Episode four is now Cully. That's where you introduce Cully as the operator of the drug. Like we've already got four almost full episodes of a show off what was the first 45 pages of this script because there was that much condensed in there that didn't work as a movie script. But if you start stretching it out, that's where you give the characters time to breathe and you can let them breathe on screen. You can give them time to basically be like Vincent D'Onofrio getting a whole episode in Daredevil to flesh out Kingpin and
Or
really
Giancarlo
make it.
Esposito's building the meth lab underneath his chicken franchise. Like the whole story there, just focusing in on that one detail, the complicated nature of it, and why this is important, and the amount of investment being made, and how, oh yeah, this one drug deal that we're sending these two Mexicans on, that money that's coming from that, or those drugs, the money that will be coming from the drugs we're getting from that part, is going to pay for this next leg of the operation. So you got the stakes
and
there.
and viewers, because it would be a TV show, have been trained up over the last 40 years of
Procedurals, yep.
of procedurals and also why am I blanking on it? Like the something storytelling.
Oh, long form storytelling, the
Yeah,
miniseries, yeah.
long with the long form storytelling to expect these types of episode, to expect to be okay with that, to like that, to appreciate getting the character moments so you can build it up so you can have an Emmy winning guest star off your show. And that way you'd also have plenty of time to get to the point where the payoffs at the end feel earned because you've spent more time with the characters to hopefully work, iron out some of those wrinkles. And also to try to basically make that last part not silly, not over the top goofy. Like you can make it, you can maybe lose the Rumble in the Bronx and go for a little more grounded but still absurdist kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
but I would say, yeah, I would see. I mean, look, we are just in the first. We had four solid episodes of a show, and probably easily could have got another, the other four for the 8 episodes. This is the kind of thing that I mean, Hulu, FX, HBO, it's right up their kind of zone.
Yeah. Oh, Apple would have done it too. Apple TV would totally do something like this.
And like this character, like the lead character, the female upset officer, with some tweaking and more time to do it, give her, like she's getting meaty monologues. She's got a backstory that you could sink your teeth into. It could be a prestige product. I mean, you've got a lot of actresses entering their like late 30s, 40s who would love to kind of maybe do this kind of role where they'd get a lead kind of zone with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, you've, I mean, I could see, I mean, I know, I mean, people like there's a whole bunch. All the people who were the young girl it girls in the '90s are aging into this role. They're age appropriate now. So
Yeah. Except for
whoever
Tara Reid, she's age appropriate but can't act. She cannot do this. Leave her alone.
that's true. That's true. Like you could go with the attractive like I could totally. I mean, not. I mean, this is wish casting, but Amy Adams would be perfect for that kind of role.
Oh yeah.
Like she's age appropriate. She's got the look. Hell, I could even see. I know she doesn't do as much acting now. You could totally get Bryce Dallas Howard. She's
Mm-hmm.
kind of got like that look and build. And after Argyle, maybe she wants to do something more like this. You know, this is that would be something you could attract probably an actress like that easily and you get I mean that's where this script should go. I mean, I know we're jumping the gun on. Yeah, I guess I am
Well, I mean,
on
it's
this one.
just we're respecting the fact that there's something here that's worth exploring, but what the way the writer explored it was too condensed, too contrived, and it doesn't feel like it honors the premise and the format really.
I mean, honestly, if he could, like split this up, get it to 8 episodes, he'd probably make more money on the deal, right, for that than he would one single movie script, right? I don't know. I
Well,
don't know how the financials are on that.
it really depends. I mean, he'll definitely be working longer than he would be if it was just a single movie script because he'd have a show that'd be ongoing for ideally for at least 10 weeks of work.
Yeah,
Um,
he'd have health insurance for a little bit.
well, I mean, you just have to do a financial threshold per year for that, but absolutely, like this one here is he has an idea that's a bit. I don't see. I mean, I see this plot being able to work for at least a bare minimum of 4 to 5 episodes, and he could probably throw in another one there that rounds it out to make it a solid 8, where you're not actually like just dwelling on one aspect of the story for 45 minutes or so, but definitely something going on there that's very interesting. And I like the idea that you got the acronym upset. It conveys what the location is. It also gives you open opportunities to explore. Okay, these are the crimes that occurred during winter when the ice bridge forms. Here's the crimes during the summer when there isn't an ice bridge. How do they balance that out? You have at least 2 seasons there, 2 seasons of plots that you could play around with that. That's pretty good to start off. Ideally, you want to have like a 5 season plan, but right off the bat for a miniseries of something of that nature, this there's a potential here if Ben decides, hey, let's listen to what Chad and Script Doctor are saying, and maybe I'll just take this and I'll rework it to make a really strong pilot, and find the best like cliffhanger piece for this pilot to extend it out into like an 8 part miniseries, because there is something there. I think the setting it works well for a miniseries. A kooky small town, a small department that has to communicate with all these federal agencies, and each season is a situation where they're stuck. It's just the two of them, and they're stuck on their own. I'm good with that.
Yep, and I think, like I said, the technical writing side, the guy's got it. He writes a nice, fast moving script where you can read it. It doesn't have there's no issues there. So if you clean it up kind of and split it into a streaming series kind of script where you've got like the episodes, I think it would read really well. So I think that it could present. I'm assuming right that a script that reads well presents better than a script that doesn't, but I'm sure that that does help. And so, there's a lot of times where I've read a lot of scripts, and some are really hard to get through and are kind of slogs, and you just keep reading the same page over and over again. This one, I didn't have any issues with that. The issues were where story stuff need to be worked on.
Yeah,
And sometimes like I feel like that part sometimes can be you can there's a lot more room to get notes to rewrite and do drafts than there is if the technical skills for writing weren't there. Like actually framing things, making it a nice flowing script that people could read and get through. And
that goes a
that's
long
why.
way. I mean, that's the thing. That does go a long way. Allows you to ignore a lot of other issues. So, yeah, I would say, yeah. Unless there's anything else you want to bring up, I think we're come to the point where like, how would you rate this script? Is this a green light or a pass, little
Yeah,
Chad?
yeah. This one's a pass as is. I would if I was running a media conglomerate and it came back to me as a refined streaming show, I would probably have good interest in looking that over again. I wouldn't like it's not a say no to seeing it again in that format, but it's a pass as a movie script. I'm not green lighting this or giving it a budget.
I'm in the same boat. I think there's something to the premise, but the condensed form of taking this premise that feels bigger than a feature film and making it a feature film just does not do it justice. So that makes it a pass for me. My advice would be to the writer, listen to what Lil Chad and myself said. See if you can break this up into a really entertaining streaming series. Don't try and pad it out, but actually explore the things that you've condensed with each of these characters.
Yeah, you've got enough elements that and interesting elements that you just need to pull them out and kind of let them breathe as episodes. You don't need to don't find or like don't try to add new characters, right? Don't you don't need to add new elements. You use what you've got existing that's been rattling around in your brain and just kind of obviously the Mexican brothers have a backstory in your mind. Let's see it. Like you
Yeah.
don't need to add new characters. You've already got these two that are interesting in there. Give me their backstory. Like that's how you go. I would say if I saw any new characters in here, I would yell at them. Use what you've got. I know as a script writer, you've built up backstories for all of them, for how they got to from point A to point B. Let's use that and let it breathe as a streaming show. No new characters. This will be season one. Refine it, clean it up, make it under that thought process, and see what we get.
And the other part too, give us some stakes for the other characters. I don't know what's at stake for any of the characters in this script. I really don't. That's the other
We
part.
did. Yeah, we did know why the Mexican brothers were working for the cartel. Everyone has a story. Tell me it. We don't know like why. We kind of get a little of why Janice wants to leave the small town. Why does Glenn want to stay? We see that he has an ex-wife and a son, but he can be the advocate for small town living. Like being the angel, so to speak, on Janice's shoulder for staying. Like, give me more about how Gabe was recruiting Janice. Like, what was he promising her? There's a lot of elements you can play with to make it a natural flowing show versus a very overly condensed and not effective movie. No
Uh,
new characters again. No new
exactly.
characters. You've
Exactly. Like you
got
don't need any new
all
main
of them are,
characters. Like
yeah,
bring in your
all of them are
supporting
there.
characters that help facilitate this, but don't worry about you've already got your main characters. You got your brothers, you got your Mexican brothers, you got your TikTok brothers, you got Janice and Glenn, you got Cully, and you got Goose. That's about all you really need.
Yeah,
Anything more is too much.
and my last advice to the writer would be really do some research on like first responders and their etiquettes and their stuff to be a little more authentic to that. Like if you've got a guy calling in on the radio that a teenager's got a chest wound, gunshot wound, they're responding. So,
And they should
you
be
know,
there, and you should put the stress where if Cole is there and he realizes the cops are coming, he's got to make that just tough decision. Do I stay with my brother or do I get the heck out of Dodge?
yeah, that's and there's a lot and you can use that to frame and set up additional drama.
Mm-hmm.
You use the real life stuff to create the conflict for your episodes. You don't have to farm it or contrive it. You can just have it organically happen from what you were trying to say anyway. That's what I'd say because you've got like there's lots of times where or things could have happened organically and they got forced. And we got truncated stuff. So lean in and lean into that. Like one of the things if you don't know it, call up and talk to somebody. I bet these people would love giving interviews about what they do. Like
Yeah, so long as
try
they're
to
not
get
talking
some.
about active cases,
Yeah,
they will answer your questions. I do it all
yeah,
the time.
yeah.
I make
That
appointments. I go down. I listen, make my notes. They're
here's
happy.
a fun fact of human nature. People like talking about what they do because it makes them feel good about what they do, right? It gives them, their people derive a very strong sense of self from having value in their job. So when you are interested in someone's job, they love talking about it. And you'll get some anacronyms, you'll get police codes, how they talk on the radio. You can make things feel more authentic just by talking to someone for an hour or two, and they probably will give you your time to do that. You can call up and say, I'm a script writer. I'm working on a movie about upset. How often do you think they hear that?
Yeah,
Never. So that like how thrilled they probably have a PR department that will give you tons of stuff to
and
try to help raise awareness of their organization.
entirely possible. I mean, that's the thing. I never heard of Upset. I had a difficult time researching them. So if they are out there, or if this is something the writer made up based on interviews with other departments, just keep going harder at it. Go back to your notes. Figure out the stuff that you had to leave aside that you could probably use if you were to format this into a television series, because that is something a little bit more engaging, I think, if you can take time to explore this type of world. Because One of the things that always frustrates me, especially from newer writers, is that they spend so much time on the world building, they forget that the world building is a byproduct of your character and what they're doing in that world. Like, you use them to discover the rules and how that world functions. You don't need to set up the world and then introduce the characters and then introduce the plot. What you want to do is you want to introduce the characters and introduce the plot and have both those interactions develop what the world is that they're in. And in some cases here, it felt like you kind of screwed around with that order, um, and I don't know why. You just it just did not work for me, at least.
Yeah, I mean potential, but it's a little rough. Um, a lot rough.
Yeah,
But but stuff there that you can work with. Like this is something where the writer has a lot he can if he's still interested in doing that. I mean, I don't know if like this is something that he's moved on from mentally and doesn't want to touch it again. But if he's got the effort and really wants to hone his craft, do an experiment. Like see what you can do making this into a show and see how it flows. I bet it he will be very happy with the end product he comes up with if he puts that effort in.
heck, Carnival Row, that Netflix series, for a long time, for 20 years, that was a feature film that just did not go anywhere until the writer decided, I'm going to turn this into a miniseries, and Netflix scooped it up immediately. So save yourself the 2 decades, give it a shot with this one here, and you never know, it might be the big break that you're looking for. Um, and I want to do a quick acknowledgement to Jeff, the rookie critic, who super chatted $2. No message, but thank you so much for the donation to the show. Much appreciated. Go check out his channel. He does some interesting commentary on movies that he should have seen while growing up but didn't, so he's late to the game there. But he also has a mini series of his own that he did called The Fat Speedster, which is a valiant effort in basically very, very, very low budget filmmaking of an original story. So go check that out as well. So thank you very much for that $2 donation, Jeff. And yeah, any final thoughts, little Chad, before we wrap it up?
No, it's just always fun to be here. I hope the audience enjoyed our conversation, and it's if you're not on Script Doctor's Patreon to be able to see these scripts and do all that, it's definitely worth it. You should check that out because that's this stuff going on all the time. It's not just on the shows on Saturday. If you're interested in being in that community.
Yeah, I've actually got some other things I'm going to be posting in the next few days, which is why I won't be sleeping much during the weekend. In addition to getting some extra episodes, bonus episodes coverage of some stuff as well. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, yeah. Also, feel free to share the stream out, share it with other people. Again, this is a really different show than what you normally get on YouTube or anywhere on social media discussing screenplays that are currently circulating around the industry. So I appreciate everyone that has been the supporter. Appreciate all you guys out there in the live chat. I want to send thank you to, of course, Darren M for the links and Adega for moderating as well, and everyone else for listening in. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And if for those of you who are listening and you don't have access to the script or you're having difficulty finding it, just reach out to me on social media. Usually the Twitter X is the best way, at ScriptDoctorPhD, and I'll be happy to hook you up with that script so that you can give it a read, see where we're coming from, maybe even have some of your own thoughts that you're willing to share. Only stipulation is please don't try and make that script go viral because we don't want it spoiled for the writer who is definitely going to be using this as a calling card or some other means to get future work. We want to make sure that they don't get they have more control over that than we do. With that being said, little Chad, where can our wonderful audience seek you out on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me over at Twitter X at LilChad10. You can find me on YouTube, the channel I co-host a show on every week. It's called Ascendant Art. So the Ascendant Art podcast. My co-host is Slender Dad. And then I also hang out with a bunch of other guys, cool guys like Script here when I'm on his show. I do a Sunday political show with Brahma Bull from the comics division. And Tuesdays we've been doing gaming streams on his channel as well. So that's basically where I'll be at for the foreseeable future. That's about the most my schedule can handle with a family. So that's where I'm kind of trying to cap it.
No, that sounds pretty reasonable. All right. I want to thank you again for swinging by. I want to thank you guys all out there for listening, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Stay tuned for next week, where we do another interesting, not so much cops and robbers script, but definitely a military themed one. At least that's what the logline says. But in order to find out those details, you have to sign up to the Patreon. It's got a 1 week free trial period at the base tier, where you get access to all my really cool posts, thoughts, past shows, all those types of things there for you to interact with, as well as direct connection to myself. But in the meantime, guys, I want you all to remember this, especially for this show. When it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.